All right. So let's call it a good day, um, or a good evening. We haven't done one of these for a while. A part of my sort of pseudo stepping away from the internet space. Well, one, because we're busy. We're busy building our spaceship, of course, as we all should. And two, because it's sort of like been a cleansing or purifying experience. And I found that screaming into the void or or into a cave that you can see the internet as has proven to be very effective um, in comparison to speaking to the voices in the cave, right? So you yell something into the cave and voices come out. That's basically how I see the internet and social media. You put something in there and then reactions come out. You throw a rock into a well and hit someone over the head, right? They shout back at you, and then you find yourself stuck in these permanent conversations that never seem to end, right? That's one way of being sucked into um, the cave itself. Instead, I feel like it's better for one, especially nowadays with how the world is, to sing their song, to speak their tune, so to speak. Let it echo wherever it you know echoes into, and then just leave, depart from the whole situation. I feel like that's best, and I'll tell you why. Well, it saves you a lot of energy. That's one. Saves you a lot of trouble. That's two. And primarily, why it's good and why it's important is that it saves other people trouble as well. Um, if I could do it all over again, I would do a sort of a, I don't know, like a weird public diary or journal entries. Now, what will we be speaking of today? Mm, I would say it's relatively important, and we all do. Um, if you've been following, um, not the news, of course, but um, let's say my own interpretation of the news, that there are some strange times that are upon us, and this isn't a time for, how to say, um, grandiose presentation, right? Um, this is not a time where you go out hunting for more publicity or um, lending new ears to your whatever you're doing. Um, and I don't want to be doing that, period. This is a time where you begin to sort of assimilate those who have lended their ears to your voice and reveal more intimate details on the general happenings of the world and the general idea of where things might go or where things are going. And it's a time of retreat, and it's a time of retreat and retrieval. Now is not the time to fight outward battles, right? Which is very strange to hear, probably for some, because I feel like a very large proponent of humanity, especially in the West, right now feels like they should be out and about, um, you know, um, battling it out against their political opponents or whatever. But truth be told, those skills have been tried before and they have failed before historically. And they will continue to fail because what that is just one step of a cycle, like we talked about in the past. Even in a historical context. Actually, let me close my window because I feel like there's some noise coming from the outside. But yeah, in a historical context, we're just repeating the same prophecies, right? The goal is not to conquer the chessboard, so to speak, to conquer the arena of time. The goal is to shift the arena into a place where our opponent is made obsolete. The goal is to take the arena where only the honorable or the valiant or the righteous are able to follow. So, what is that arena? Is it an arena within a communist or capitalist structure or a capitalist society? Is it that sort of arena where you have to contend not only with the lack of general morality in a systemic sense, but you also have to contend with the slaves and the following slave masters um, that sort of like control it. And if you understand systems, you understand that once you create a loop, um, it just needs oil to run, right? And the occasional fixing up here and there. So once you've created sort of a meat grinder, right? It automatically powers itself, so to speak. And the upgrade and the maintenance it receives is, well, are the people who step inside of it, right? Um, why I'm giving you this sort of disclaimer is because I feel like I have to excuse myself and then explain myself when I speak of retreating into your personal space, taking care of your health, um, doing the things that empower you and your intuition. Because the inevitable change that comes, which is the passage from a technocratic society, which is basically destined to become doomed eventually, from that technocratic society, um, we are going to transcend into a more human centric society. And what is man without technology, right? What is man without AI? That will be, for example, one of the key questions asked in the coming years. And a very important thing to understand about that is primarily we will learn through AI, through the onset of AI, that what differentiates the man and the human spirit and the human heart from a calculative super machine, right? That can, I don't know, have even predictive realms of thought. What differentiates those two machines, the human machine and the artificial machine, is a very abstract, mystical thing called an intuitive sense. Thusly, um, because artificial intelligence is, well, artificial, it cannot access the realms of thought that are without sense. Um, it cannot access realms of thought beyond logic, right? Like a mother's love for her child, or um, the intuitive feeling a mother gets when their child is in trouble and they turn back for some reason to check up on them, right? That is something AI can never achieve. Yet this skill, this intuitive element, so to speak, is the fundament of all true psychic ability or dormant psychic ability that is within um, the human species. Yet it is one of the most, how to say, underdeveloped and underappreciated and undertrusted material that exists in the framework of the human spirit and our three-dimensional experience. And once the onset of artificial intelligence and predictive intelligence um, becomes undeniably manifest and true, which might be sooner than we think, we will then have to contend with the idea of intuition as something serious, right? We will have to contend with the idea that eventually we will have to dive deeper into the senses that we in the past perhaps did not know we even had, right? Yet that is the portal through which man ascends into his next phase. Now, I'm not saying that every person must become in tuned with their intuition, but there are humans that are more intuitive in different types of ways. And there are others who are not that intuitive, yet they are managerial, they have administrative traits, they are physically gifted, they are, um, how to say, intuition almost borders creativity and art, but not always. And understanding that realm, understanding that world, and understanding those portal places through which intuition emerges is probably the most important pursuit alongside your mental and physical health as of today. And of course, as we say, the physical and the material representation of your energy and the energy of your spirit, what we call building your spaceship, or why we say make your home into a beautiful place. That single rebellious act, right, is doing far more damage in a good, positive sense, right, than any protest or protesting, I would say, um, would and should and could. And it's very difficult for the average person to understand that because the average person doesn't think in terms of years down the line. Um, he or she thinks in terms of what is pressing now. And if you look at the modern world, you will understand a very simple trap truth or truth trap or a half truth that everything is pressing. There's not a single thing in this world that is not pressing in human society and human civilization. Everything is pressing. You're late to everything at all times, right? That's what creates the buzz, or what, um, in a capitalist sense, you would call the consumerism buzz, right? It's what allows people to speed through time and speed through their lives, right? It is also what allowed me to speed through my life. And then you forget about the more important things, right? Things like um, harmony of mind, stress-free living, um, comforts, the gratitude of being able to spend time with your friends and family, your health, which is, as we're told, from the day we were born, probably from our elders, the most important thing you have. Yet we disregard it. I too, for the longest time, disregarded my health, for example. as my parents disregarded their health and my health inadvertently, of course, and their parents disregarded their health um, to keep up with the times, so to speak. So the message of such a thing is if you do not beautify your mind, you cannot beautify the external. If you do not beautify the mind, you cannot beautify the body. If you don't beautify the mind, you cannot build a beautiful home, right? And that's where most of the homework is. Because just winning a battle isn't enough. Whatever battle you're fighting, I'm sure your intentions are good, as strange as that may sound, right? I am very confident in fact that even if there are two people here on the opposite side of one border, I'm sure your intentions are in your own interpretation somehow, I don't know, um, honorable or valuable or worth it or whatever you want to call it. I'm talking beyond those. I'm saying that just winning the battle isn't enough if you don't know the story that comes after the battle. You can know what you're fighting for, but you also need to know what comes after the fighting is over, because the fighting eventually will be over. For example, you will grow old. You might have a chronic illness that disables you in surprising ways. You might think you have time, but in fact, it might, appear that you don't. Um, that's life. These things happen, right? They happen for a reason, of course, to teach us about the value of the moment, right? So, what is the kaleidoscope? The kaleidoscope is the abstract understanding of the portal of beauty that exists within the human mind. We call it, among our circle, um, the kaleidoscope because it is a combination of colors and then the energetic um, interpretations of those colors, the archetypal meanings of the colors, and then the the resonance of those colors with the observer, and then the silhouettes that are created from the manipulations of these colors within the mind. When you, let's say, look into your mind, or where you go deeper into yourself, um, you will find a lot of resistance to this beauty, right? Because there's a lot of pressing darkness in your mind and in the world, right? Now, everything we've said so far has been rather cliche. You've heard it 1,000 times. You'll say, well, I've heard this before, and I know where this is going, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to calm down and take a deep breath. But I assure you, that's not where this battle is going, right? Why we spoke on the importance of knowing where the battle's going, right? The the prime skill of the future man, if you wish to be unplugged from the system, and the system is being formed before our very eyes, if you wish to be unplugged from the system, then you must reach the higher realms, um, quite literally, through thought and access intuition. Because today I can tell you, don't eat McDonald's. It's not good for you. You can learn that. Don't listen to this video. It's fake and AI generated. I can tell you this today with confidence, with a certain amount of confidence. Very soon I won't be able to tell you those things with confidence because the world is going to become very confusing. And if you follow the boundaries of logic, logic will be very expensive, right? So even nowadays, already you live in a world where there are viruses that can infect your computer. And then there are antivirus software that protects you from the viruses that might infect your computer. And then there are websites dedicated specifically to warn you about which antivirus programs are actually valid. And then there are other websites which try to show you which of these websites are valid, that show you that different types of antivirus programs are valid. So it's like this endless loop of fact checking that never ends. So whoever is at the top circle of, well, creating fact rules logic, right? So if you want to maneuver the future world without signing into it, so to speak, right? You will need great intuition, a great intuitive sense, or you will need a group of friends or a family or a, a clan or commune or whatever you want to call it that are intuitively armed and that are armed with a sort of inner beauty and inner faith that are able to guide, right? That are able to guide you through the coming dilemma. And the coming dilemma is very tempting in the sense where there are many fruits to be taken from technology if used well. And you should use that if your intuition allows it. But then there are also many temptations and, dark manipulative things that you probably shouldn't take because your intuition says so. And I always joke that every mystic or magician or formulaic art person or whatever ends up, just being like a party trick, right? Where you come out and say, well, in the future, this and this and this and that is going to happen. I don't want to be like that. I just want to tell you, perhaps what you could think about or consider prioritizing in your life, even though everyone else says the opposite is important, right? Um, to have money flow to you freely and easily, doing something soft, something that's not stressful. You don't need to conquer the financial realm to live a balanced and harmonious life with a group of people that you connected to, even over the internet. Another gift of technology, an indirect symptom of its darker agendas, right? We always say, um, if they give you a sword, carve a new path with it. Don't hit someone over the head. So sometimes when you're given a tool for killing, you can use it for peaceful means. You can use it for better means to better your situation and the situation of those around you. Of course, you could also use it to fight back, but leave that as a last resort because it won't look nice for people on the other end of that, right? Mm, and we have to care for them too. But a general understanding of what you can do with knowing where things are going is you can team up, right? You can have unlikely friends in unlikely places. People who understand the spiritual bondage um, that humanity has been pushed into or fallen into, so to speak. Now, if you wish to deliver yourself from that bondage, it's very simple. I have many friends who are very successful businessmen or money people, as I call them, um, and they're very self-aware. And because they're self-aware and their intuition hits well, so to speak, there is an overwhelming sensation among them and myself that there is a definitive lack of time. There's a lack of time for the things that need to change within us all. There are things that need to happen within you, and there's not a lot of time left for those shifts or those changes to occur. And the amount of people not only hearing but understanding this message is very few, very, very few. But it's not about quantity, it's about um, quality. So in this case, I feel like it's very important to focus on yourself and your vicinity, to focus on the true winnings of a comfortable life, which is, mm, let's say you ask yourself, why am I overly stressed about things that might stop to matter in a heartbeat? Are you even overly stressed, right? Um, if you are stressed, ask yourself, what's the end goal of that stress? That stress most likely exists in the future, and we don't even know if tomorrow is guaranteed, right? Mm. Now, I'm not saying doom and gloom. I'm saying to find within yourself the angelic perspective. And the angelic perspective is the perspective of the now. The angelic perspective is the perspective of the present. Man's present state, right, is a combination or collection of our past endeavors, but also the present interpretation of our past. Once you understand what your past has been leading you to, your past transforms, so to speak, because it gains newfound meaning, even if your past has not been fun at all. Let's say like mine, right? My past has not been fun for the most part. It has been riddled with difficulty and pain. Maybe yours has as well, to a certain degree. But understanding that that past has found its meaning through your current understanding in the now of what you're being led to, right? It transmutes it from a painful experience and a painful memory to something that is formative and essential to where you are now and where you're going. So, right now, the age of understanding that is long past us, right? So, the age of understanding where have we been brought by our journeys, that's long past. Now it's time to find the arrow of what your life is leading to. And that's going to be a very big question of, well, if I brought you if I went to great lengths, let's say, to bring you to this specific place, and this specific place is where you are now, wouldn't you want to ask the question, well, why did you go through all this trouble to bring me here? Where are we going? Now, we're not there yet, but we're halfway, I tell you. Halfway to what? Well, you have the luxury of looking at your past and seeing it as a sort of um, symbol, right? The tail end of your journey. You've listened to 50% of a song. You sort of start to see the pattern and understand the rhythm, and you sort of start to notice where it might go. You still don't know what to expect, but there's a there's a sort of a pattern that emerges, right? Now, if you look back at the song of your life, right, where does the crescendo take you, right? Um, where is the rhythm leading you? Mm, And that is when your intuitive senses understand, activate, because the intuitive sense is the the present self's assumption of what is divinely fated and destined according to what you've known in the past and according to what you've yet to learn from the future. So it's important to go inwards. It's important to find beauty within and then create beauty and to pull that beauty outwards. Um, why? Because the world needs it, right? And it might not feel like a lot today, but it will in the future that is fated to be built, right? There is a future where you ignore this very cautious thought, right? There is such a future um, where you go about your everyday um, and you chase the paycheck and you get this and that. You're a part of the well-oiled machine that we talked about, right? The system without a face or a name. Um, you succumb to its reality. You succumb to the weight of that which is. And then there's also a reality, the second path, and what I would call the fated path, where you step out of that role, the role that society at large has given you or wants to give you, and you step into the role where you bring your inner beauty out into the world. And it could be through something as simple as making your home a beautiful place. It could be something as something as simple as tending to your garden. It could be something that beautifies your environment. Because all of these symbols, all of these external material you are creating, these will be your tools and your spell casting wands, so to speak, to activate inner beauty, to stare into the kaleidoscope and derive meaning from beautifying your consciousness, um, to intuitively understanding what the moves are, so to speak. Mm, No, like we said, there is a time for when you're loud to gather the crowd, and then eventually the crowd will dissipate, and only a few voices and a few eyes will remain. Um, that's the usual passing of things, right? So you can't escape that. But if you do find yourself in a state where you do have a few people around you, let's say, listening to you and um, thinking twice about the things you share or want to teach them, right? I would advise and suggest one of these things to be the understanding of the importance of externalizing their inner beauty, because that's the thing that's under attack, so to speak, right? Now we always say this, why it's important, and we're going to talk about the kaleidoscope method of, I wouldn't even call it a meditation, it's sort of like a visualization method. Um, the degree of one's spiritual and intuitive potential can be calculated, and it is calculated by the degree, intensity, and quality of their imaginative function. The question is such: what is the most beautiful thing you can imagine? And then the opposite question to that is, what is the most horrendous thing you can imagine? So when we say the um, tree of life and its many branches, what we in truth mean is the tree of the mind, mm, and how far it can reach to into thought forms. And there are some thought forms that inspire or are inspired by the material world. And then there are some thought forms that have not yet occurred in the material world, or some thought forms that are not of the material world. Now, firstly, you would want to, of course, as any student would, is to learn how to visualize that which already is. That already happens in the form of your stressors and your worries and your recollections of the past and your um, vivid imaginings of whatever could happen in the future. I want you for a moment to take a second and really understand how vivid your recollections of your potential futures are, how real they must look in your mind for them to emotionally affect you in the present. So, in truth, in a technical sense, you're already very well versed in the art of visualization, but you have troubles visualizing the things that are not highly likely. The more you depart from that which is likely to occur or that which you know has occurred in the past or could have occurred in the past, the easier it is to imagine because you have a cheat sheet of your memories for the past or a cheat sheet of your worries and stressors and ambitions and desires for the future. But what happens if there are things beyond thought that are inspired by the physical world that you don't have a cheat sheet for? What happens then? Well, the question there is this. Again, what is the most beautiful thing your mind can imagine? And you hold that vision in your thought? Well, what if I told you that if you took 5 to 10 minutes a day trying to imagine the most beautiful thing you can possibly imagine, you would never imagine the same thing, um, each day because that thing would change because you would start to realize there is significant depth to your ability to comprehend beauty and to shape the image of what that is. That's what we call the kaleidoscope method. All you have to do is imagine the most beautiful thing you can, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a specific type of thing. But if you can hold that vision in your mind, it will affect your heart in very meaningful, very pristine, um, very incredible ways. And once it does affect your heart in all those wonderful ways, remember that headspace. Remember that mental space, because that mental space will be the closest thing to the highest potential of you and the highest potential of this world that you have access to. And the context of that beauty that you have formed within your mind will have given you the the angelic perspective, the angelic point of view on current events and on your own life. So understand that that place is a portal to a mind state that is your highest mind state, and to act in the service of that, or at least to be inspired, to become inspired by the highest potentiality of your mind, you can perhaps act out and behave in ways in your life For other people, it would probably look like you're an idiot, right? If I don't take free money, 99% of all humanity would think I'm an idiot. But I'm not living and thinking in within the boundaries of this logic or the logic of this world, but I want to be living with the logic of the world beyond it, right? So again, what's the most beautiful thing you can imagine? Really take a moment to at least see it and then see it change before your eyes, right? See it shift from one thing to the other. And then finally, when you're able to hold the image in your head, see it speak back to you, see it take sentience, see it show you things, right? That's where the mystery is. That is the precipice or the edge of your conscious potential. The greatest artists and the most gifted writers and um, musicians and so on and so forth, they have access to that place where you're trying to go, you're trying to reach with this visualization or meditative process. That's where you're trying to go. You're trying to upgrade the capacity for your mind to envision a heavenly state of being. Firstly for yourself and then for everyone and everything else. So what is your grasp of a heavenly state of being? If you push the limits of that, you will eventually come to its objective endpoint, right? If you pursue that beauty long enough, you will come to an objective endpoint. And that feeling that you will feel, that place that you will see, that place will be what connects you to everyone else on this earth and beyond it. It will be the one common thing, the one common truth that you and them share. Even if you're wholly different in everything else, if you follow that path, that's why they call it the narrow path. And if you envision your highest idea of heaven through manipulating the mind, the consciousness, and your vision to unlock further and further depths of it, and from that mental state, from that mind space, become inspired to act and behave in the current world, right? That can only take you to that place. That beauty to become inspired by it can only take you to that place because that is where you presently are. Or you could become inspired by battle and rebellion and whatever. Or you could become inspired by heavenly beauty. And your every action in this world, regardless of how different it is from that world, will be rather costly because you're so far removed from where your mind is and where this world is, but it will be absolutely worth it. It will be absolutely fully and wholly worth it because you know that you are acting out of higher meaning and higher purpose. So all you have to do is stare into the kaleidoscope of your thoughts and unlock the boundaries and the limitations of your consciousness. And the farther up you go, the easier it will become to keep that vision intact. Because I'll tell you a secret, when you do start to do this process, you get a lot of intrusive thoughts. You'll imagine this and that, and then suddenly you imagine some random BS or something ugly comes in the picture, or something disruptive comes in the picture, or you remember this or you remember that, and your thoughts steer away from it because it's difficult to, well, firstly accept that your mind is playing tricks on you, and then to allow your mind to wander, but you should. Eventually, eventually, it will get bored, right? A lot of people resist the demons in their head, so to speak, right? Um, when you imagine a beautiful thing and then you imagine something ridiculous or disgusting, and your mind naturally or accidentally, let's say, does this, a lot of people become pissed off or they get scared of it and they choose to ignore it. But you should allow it to play out, right? Let it play out those disturbing thoughts. They can't harm you or anyone else. Eventually, you will get bored and you'll stop thinking them. Um, and when you do stop thinking them, there will be more space that is made for pursuing that sort of inner beauty, right? And when you do, this is how you upgrade your consciousness, and this is how you upgrade your intuition and your intuitive senses, which again, um, um, I feel and I deeply, I deeply feel um, will be the prime characteristic of the spiritual um, pioneers of the next era or the next technocratic age, right? Um, it's either that or the machines or the machinery of a consumerist capitalist society, right? Again, and it's not easy because you also have to contend with this world. You can't become completely enamored with flying somewhere in the clouds. No, no, no. You must also contend with the realities of this world. You must also understand that most of the food you're told to eat is probably poison. Something I myself learned very late in my life, and regrettably so, right? Um, um, Most of the medicine you take might cause chronic illness. Another thing I learned late in my life, right? Because there's no information out there, or um, I don't know, like most laws are not put in place to protect you, but to be potentially used against you. These are all objective hardships and adversities that we have in this life. And they're difficult to maneuver, but they are essential to maneuver from um, from a point of how much can you do, right? So you shouldn't hold yourself back, is what I'm saying, right? Again, I'm not saying quit your job and walk into the nearest forest, as appealing as that might sound, um, to me even. I'm saying focus on what really matters for the calmness and the harmony of your soul, because that is your currency that you will not be able to trade back. That's what really matters. It doesn't matter if you have $200,000 or $150,000. It doesn't matter if you have a Bugatti or a Toyota Prius. It doesn't matter. Um, and you'll meet many people who think that it matters, who will say that it matters, so this and that, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is the quality of your now. Are you living a peaceful, stress free, harmonious life? Are you focusing on beautifying the mind and beautifying the world around you? Are you focusing on learning your spiritual lessons and understanding the spiritual symbols that are provided to you by life, um, on what you need to work on, or what you need to pay attention to, or what you need to pay less attention to, right? Those are the things that, at the end of the day, if you are on the narrow path that I am on, for example, matter. Um, Again, this doesn't mean to not be successful at your job. This doesn't mean to not make a lot of money if you can. But as long as you enjoy it and as long as it's a part of your harmony, um, if it comes at the expense of your harmony and at the expense of stress, which means at the expense of your health, right? Especially future health, it's probably not the way to go, right? Um, I know it feels very masculine, especially to men, to sacrifice their current well being, right, for the promise of riches in the future, right? But the the primary lesson of today's talk is that that future is very uncertain, right? It is possibly more uncertain than it has ever been. So don't become attached to being happy or content or satisfied in the future. How about you become happy and satisfied now and walk into your wonderful future already prepared for its blessings, so to speak, right? How about you focus on that? That really works. So, as you work on your visualization and as you work on that sort of creative outlet, you will find yourself to become more creative in whatever you do. You'll find yourself a better painter, a better writer, a better fighter, a better dancer, a better singer, whatever. That realm of enhanced possibility is what gives you the intuitive fundament to self realize and self express in the current world, in the material world, things that in ways that no one ever has before, because it shows you the highest image of your potential. It shows you the highest version or vision of who you are. So, again, the question behind the meditation is, what is the most beautiful thing I can imagine today? And do that every day for 5 minutes, right? Um, and then once you've achieved a strong enough vision where you can relate it to something heavenly, remember the mind space, remember the emotion that you feel when you are in that space, and live your life according to that, because that is your portal to your highest self. If you behave from that point, you match the destination with the action. So if you want to hit that very small, that infinitesimally small target that we spoke about in the past, in a world of infinite possibilities, then you better know exactly what it is if you want to know where it is. So knowing what it is forming the image of it in your mind. It's very clear. Then you'll be able to know how it is, because everything that leads you towards that path, you will act on it. Everything that you do know, because you understand that place very well, everything that doesn't vibe with that place, you will not do. You will avoid, of course, because it's leading you away from that place. So you understand that it's a choice that you can make over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's why it's called surrender. That's why if you want to access the higher realms, you must surrender to their nature, what they are. It's not that you rob yourself of the ability or the option to choose otherwise, but you gift yourself the wisdom to understand why every other choice is the lesser choice. If you could understand that, right, then you will enjoy every part of the journey, even the dying, even the stressful and painful days, even doing the things you don't want to be doing. If it leads you closer to that place, you can be content with your fate. You can find satisfaction with that which has been ordained to you, the unique path that has been given to you to attain that place as permanent residence, so to speak, right? Right now, we were just tourists. We're just not even understanding where we wish to go. But once that image forms in your mind, you will see that you'll be able to spot other people who also hold that image. What I call a gentle sadness when you look at a person's eyes, when you look into a person's eyes, and if they have that, you know they've seen that place once or twice at least in some distant fever dream somewhere, right? You know that they've touched it before. They know that this world can be more than it currently is, so much more. So, okay, let's end it on this. I feel like we've repeated this a few times, but I like repeating myself. It turns into sort of like this mantra type of experience. Um, that's the message. I will be less active with the post, but I'm very active in our Kaleidoscope group chat. Um, if you join our Kaleidoscope group, if you're interested in spirituality and physiognomy in specific, um, there's a thread you'll find there where I say, hey, if you want to join our group chat, leave a comment. So just find that, leave a comment there, and I'll gladly add you to our group chat where we, talk about literally everything. Um, and we'll do, these spaces, here and there. Um, so I hope everyone's well. I hope you find what matters to you, right? Um, and pay no mind to the craziness of this world, my friends. Pay absolutely no mind. You make these things obsolete by giving them no attention. I am not participating personally, right? Um, I am participating in my entry into a higher state of being. That's what I want to be participating in. I don't want to be participating in the glorification of an eternal conflict that will never end and has never ended, right? Um, so yeah, think on that. Build those spaceships, my friends, right? We're close. We're close. So yeah. God bless. Thank you everyone.